found that for my own writing, lots of times it's the energy I put into it is the self-destructive energy I had up until the point when I started writing. And until I started writing, I had a lot of episodes where I'd sort of zone out and I'd wake up just bleeding from numerous cuts all over myself. And that was how I was dealing with emotional pain, was by blocking out by physical pain. And I didn't know how to get rid of the emotional pain, so I blocked it. When I started writing, I found that I could get rid of that emotional pain through the writing. There are still times when I lose it a bit, and it occurred with one of the pieces I wrote that I performed just last night that I'll probably never do again, and because I don't want to go through that again. And I realized while I was up there on stage, and I put my hand in my pocket while I was reading this poem, and I realized I had a razor knife with me. And I knew exactly at that moment what I was going to do with it. And during the poem...
There you go.
Yeah, I sliced myself open.
Jesus, you really did.
Yeah.
Wow. God, you really cut yourself open. Wow. I thought that when I first did, I thought that they were more scratches, but they're not. That's open.
And I don't think anybody in the audience realized what I did at first. And then I got up and I'm bleeding, and at the end of that piece, no one applauded. And I don't know if it's because that they hated it or because they were just too stunned to move.
No, they couldn't on the surface accept what you were doing, but they knew inside what you had done.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in Albuquerque, we don't see it that often.
And that's an example of where I was showing the dark side. Most of my writing is exposing that dark side of the moon that I've got to get out of myself or it'll destroy me. I mean, sometimes I think my entire life has just been one path of self-destruction going wrong. I mean, like the smoking, that's just a way of killing myself very slowly.
But you're young and you'll quit soon, you know that. But see, it won't destroy you. The dark side, because you're revealing the dark side. You're dealing with the dark side. And it is a whole, you're dealing in a whole level. It might hurt in other ways, you know. I mean, it's going to hurt maybe in other ways from time to time until you reach a point of being satisfied with your acceptance and your recognition as the artist that you are. And once that occurs, you know, you are whole. It's like the problem is that our government, our country doesn't recognize what you're doing. It doesn't recognize what a lot of artists are doing.
Right.
Therefore, you know, I mean, we're cutting back all the time. Artists don't need money. You know, nobody needs
Jesse
money.
Helms, the patron saint of the arts.
And yes, they're the patron saint of the arts, and all of our throats are being cut. And you cannot allow yourself to do what you have to do as an artist, which, you know, I'm going to digress, but which benefits those people who were there last night, who experienced what you did before they allowed themselves to totally take it in. That's why they didn't applaud, because they were taking this in of what they just had observed and experienced. It's not anything. Yeah. It's not something that's going to leave them quickly. You know, they experienced something. You gave them something. You shook it up a little bit. You shook up the robot a little bit. You know, and the oil goes to the brain. Yeah. It goes to the gut. But see, in your case, where you were saying the cutting and the cutting that you did before, isn't it true though? Isn't it true that there's two types of pain involved in that? But when you would be cutting yourself, it is in a sense a releasing for you of the inner pain.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, did it hurt?
Yeah.
It hurts when you do it.
Yeah. And I think there was a part of it of watching the blood come out was a psychological symbolism of watching the pain come out.
Of watching the pain leak out of you.
Yeah. One of the best things that ever happened to me after a performance, there's this young punk rocker here in town, goes by the name of Crow, and he came up to me the next night. He's like, you know, you read a piece last night, and until I heard that, I was going to walk out on the street and shoot myself. And he was serious. And I said, what are you talking about? He's like, I couldn't go on anymore. And then by listening to what you were saying, it got out of me what I needed to get out. You know, he was able to purge himself from listening to me.
Yeah.
He's like, and here I am.
you know, it never became so clear to me as one time years ago in San Francisco, and I was at the Goethe Institute, and they always had these little showings. They had a little theater in there, wonderful little screening room, and they always had these showings of noir films and German films and experimental films. And this one, I used to go to all of them because I lived about 2 blocks away, right on Bush. And they, one night they showed this thing. It was called Der Bomber Pilot, and it was a German kind of experimental film, and it was so bleak. I mean, it was just, it was so bleak, and at that time my work was called Relentlessly Relentless, and so I was almost in a state of orgasm from beginning to end, you know, because this thing was so bloody bleak.
Yeah.
Well, I went outside afterwards, and I was walking, and I suddenly became aware of San Francisco. And I saw the lights, and I could see people moving past me, and it was like a feeling of, God, what a great feeling to be alive, you know, how great this is. And then it instantly hit me, bang. Had I just come out of Mary Poppins, I probably would want to shoot myself.
Yeah.
I'd come out into this city, and I'd look around me and say, this fucking reality, you know, that would be it.
Disney films always make me want to shoot myself.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. But see, it's just, you know, it's the play of the opposites. You know, and in a sense, when you brought up Jimmy Dean's perverseness, or I did, but his perverseness did that. His perverseness was moving against a grain that said, don't be perverse. You know, be quiet, be acceptable. You know, like, you know, I mean, what do we do? You go to school. You know, you get a degree, you go to college, you become a doctor. I mean, the important thing is to make as much money as you possibly can. So you become a doctor, a lawyer, an Indian chief or something, you know.
When you learn to be yourself.
That's right. You know, you never, yeah, right. That's, and you never does that happen. Never does that really happen. And I talked to someone who said, how, you know, one of the head librarians had a lunch with her, and she was saying, how do you write about these people? How do you write about these terrible? I don't have anything to do. I said, what are you talking about? She said, oh, murder. You know, you like Manson, and I mean, I said, well, you know, I said those. You know, those are like, you know, those are shooting stars. Those are the big stars of this thing. But I said, well, I don't understand. She said, well, it's not normal. It's not, you know, I mean, it's not the normal thing. So, in other words, what she was saying was that's the dark side of the moon, and you've got to stay away from it. You've got to wear blinkers. But I said, look, you know, it's not the dark side of the moon. You know, murder, per se, the majority, by far, all the majority of murders are really domestic homicides. It's the doctor, the lawyer, the you know, the policeman.
Or they always say, oh, he was the nicest guy. We never expected him to do something.
That's right.
Like
He was
that.
the nicest guy. But what occurred has been walking inside of him all of his life.
Right.
And he had no touch with him, not in touch with himself at all. Only in touch with the surroundings, the physical things that he has here to deal with, to grapple with, to pay the bills, the insurance policy. Things are creeping up, and you can't. You know, there's no strength there. But see, the problem with you, the problem with me, the problem with many of the creative people I know, is that you're not subsidized. If I said to you, Tim, your work is tremendous. You are saying something important. I called you.
We'll bleep that part out.
I'm gonna try and pick up where
I'm rolling.
I said your name.
I'm rolling it.
Okay. If there was an agency that said, we love your poetry, what you're saying is meaningful to people. You know, you've said something here that has caused some guy to come up to you and say, hey, I was going to go out and shoot myself 5 minutes ago until I heard you, and now I'm not going to go out and shoot myself. If there was an agency that said, well, that's a value. You know, what you're doing, what you're saying is a value. I mean, even though it might seem like it could be at times critical of the social norms or of politics or policies, you are an artist, and therefore you qualify for a grant, you qualify for a stipend of X amount of dollars for the rest of your life, like a Social Security. You would be paid a certain amount. No, you're not going to be able to do what I said. I would become a playboy
Right.
and buy a boat and go out into the ocean and sail the boat or anything like that. No, I can't do that. You're not going to do that. But you're going to have a comfortable quarter, and you're going to have a place to work, and you're going to be able to go to the coffee shops and go everywhere else you want to do, and you're going to be able to pursue your vision to the clarification of your vision. That is what an artist is, the clarification of your vision. Sometimes somebody can do it wham, really young, start right off, do it really quick in their lives. Other times it takes them forever,
Right.
Forever. But it doesn't matter. As long as you come to a point where yes, that bleeding side of beef, if that be the case, it could be a gorgeous, beautiful young girl lying on a bed, a handsome young man diving through space, with the wings for the sun or something, right? Well, that's what it is, and that's what's happening. And that is the complete openness, the complete mirroring of something inside the artist himself. And once you reach that point, or someone says, yeah, he's reached that point, then I think that it's really worthy for that person to be supported and to receive financial security so that they don't have to starve and commit suicide.
Sure.
Or carve themselves into pieces. And the pain of trying to survive in a world that does not open its arms to you or to where you're at if you're critical. It's almost like living in a dictatorship where you are criticizing politics, you're criticizing policy, and therefore you should be put away to Devil's Island. And that Devil's Island is possibly your own creation because we can certainly afford this. We have all the drugs. Drugs are not legalized, therefore they're completely open, and we can do anything we want, and we can destroy ourselves in all the various wonderful ways that we have to destroy ourselves.
How many artists has this world lost because they weren't able to give up part of their life to dedicate themselves to what they do?
Uncountable.
If I could support myself completely through my writing and my artwork, how much more could I do than what I do now when I have to dedicate most of my time to earning a living through something else?
Yes. Or it's the same thing if I say to you, you do have talent to write, and therefore we need a new a whole new thing written about this particular dog food. And you seem to have the gift of facility with words, and so therefore you'll get we get you to work at the ad agency.
And then I find this with the job that I have, that lots of times in the past my creative energy has been sucked up by the job and I had nothing left to give into my own stuff.
That's right. I taught for a long time and I don't teach anymore. I've been invited to a couple times, but I don't for the same reason that I just used to find. In San Francisco, I taught 2 classes a week at the university, and then I had a special, separate writing group that I headed. That was my own writing group. And I just found that it was just draining. I mean, my battery was just being sucked out because it was like the classes that I had were kind of like like a group analysis,
Yeah.
And they became very intense, and they were very beneficial. But I either had to do that or do my own work. It created too much of a conflict.